for the end of this period. It's going to be totally.
Oh, I think we lost Jason.
Yeah, I think we lost him, but he should be getting back into the meeting very soon, guys.
1 second, guys. Okay, so until Jason
All right,
comes
guys.
back. Oh, he's back. Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
Oh, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, that's okay, Jason.
Should be seeing me again. Oh, can you co-host me again, please, Victoria?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so guys, but what you were seeing was pretty cool, right? So we're saying like, oh, profits are up and that's amazing. And it depends entirely on how you're counting that profit. Because the way you're counting this, you're probably going to say, oh, well, really, should I buy JMMB? Again, this is not financial advice. What I'm saying is that the way they're counting it seems to be the way that's more relevant. So these stuff like FVOCI, that's fair value of comprehensive income, something like that. If they made an investment and it temporarily dipped, then they're going to be legally obligated to require that as a gain or a loss. It doesn't really mean that the company itself is worth more or less, or it doesn't mean that their cash flows are more or less. So the moral of the story is pay attention to what you're counting. And that's how you get a better idea of the company. And we have any comments on JMMB before we move on?
What I thought was really interesting was the fact, I don't remember what their profit level was, but it didn't include their share of profit from Sagicor. So last quarter, that was, I think, $1.7 billion or something like that. So you can, if you want to gauge, you can add that to this quarter's profit. And I think they said that they would have definitely exceeded their targets if that share of profit was accounted for. So I think next quarter they're going to have, next quarter they'll definitely have that share of profit, and maybe even, it might include both last quarter and the current quarter. So that's something to look out for.
That makes sense. All right, thanks, Matthew, for that. Another one is JFP. So I think this is Jamaica Fiberglass Products or Producers or something, and then they shorten the name. I think this prospectus aesthetically is one of the best I've ever seen, right? These people really know how to do decor. So you see these here, and they're trying to raise 280 million in their IPO. Even the way they do their charts, it's pretty cool. Net profit, you've seen it been going up in the past 2 years pretty steadily. So this is an interesting company to look out for. I'm going fast because our time is much shorter than I thought it was. This was a boring slide, so I put this meme here. But key seemed to be turning around. That's no pun intended, because their shareholders' equity like nearly quadrupled. So it's earnings season. Lots of these statements are coming out. We have a lot of them, so I'm not staying on that any longer. GK has some cool stuff going on. I think this looks very JMMB-like. What do you guys think? They're Jamaican Dollar Money Market Fund, Dollar Growth Income Fund. But it's cool that they're getting into this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing they're doing is saying, oh, like fourfold growth in the coming year. So people seem to be pretty bullish in Jamaica, at least for the most part. I don't think Mailpack's earnings were that great, but overall, like, stuff are happening. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Well, another one, inflation, right? So this came out 9.7% in January 2022. This is really wild because imagine like you have a 10-year period and you had $100 at the beginning of that 10-year period. If this were happening consistently over 10 years, what you'd have at the end is worth $31, right? 100 gone to 31 in 10 years. That's really whack. So while they're targeting this is what's happening. It's a mad complex problem, and nobody, including me, has all the answers. So I'm going to put these disclaimers out there. If any one person understood all of these things, then like it would be different. But the stuff that seems to be contributing to it are the energy crisis, supply chain issues, and printing money gets a bad rap because it's so entrenched in warring stories. But I think it's important to say it anyway. Could you give me a sec, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, guys, and this is really reflected in everything that you're seeing happening. So chicken prices going up. I mean, food prices in general, just so many things happening, and it all comes back to inflation. So it's a serious issue, it's a monster. And then the thing too, apart from prices going up, the money that you already have is valued less on a daily basis because of inflation. So we said it's every meeting. This is why it's so important to invest, because it's a hedge against inflation. So to make real gains, you have to catch up to inflation and then make some more. So,
right.
And not to even mention the depreciation of the Jamaican dollar in general as well, because our dollar has been sliding, especially since COVID hit us in the last, 22, 24 months. So you have to factor that in along with factoring in inflation. So we'll see. There are many factors pushing inflation out, but I would say our representatives are trying their best compared to many other countries.
Right. Because a lot of other countries kind of just let it happen. And we see that our BOJ director seems to be taking much more of an interest in inflation targeting than exchange rate targeting, which is controversial. I'm not really going to comment on what I think about that. But what I'm going to show you is some basics. This is kind of more into some of the science, why these stuff are happening, actual science. So like, guys, think of the Earth as a ball, right? And then think of cold air at the North Pole, because we're in the Northern Hemisphere and a lot of people live there. So that's what we're looking at. Think of it like a cloth on top of the ball. Now, the cloth can be taking up a similar amount of area, but depending on how it's shaped, like if it covers it evenly or if it covers it in areas that allow cold air to dip really far south and affect where people are, then you can have different demands of energy. And Europe had something like sea going on. So Europe was really cold. Europe is a dense area of population of relatively well-off people, so they're going to want to warm up and pay for that. And to warm up, they rely primarily on imports to meet their natural gas from Russia, right? And we've been seeing these Russia-Ukraine tensions going on. So Russia also gets really cold, and they need to warm up their own people before they're able to export for other persons. So this makes the supply really short. And people in Europe can be kind of stubborn as well, because they don't really want to be using these fossil fuels. They're moving away. So we have lots of demand for energy and persons not being willing to use fossil fuels, or fossil fuels becoming scarce as well, to fuel it. So what does that cause? A shortage of oil, a shortage of energy, right? So by the time Biden, I'm not even getting into what his policies did, because it really doesn't seem to be obvious what he's trying to do. It's kind of like, keep people happy while also getting votes. But I'm not commenting on that. What I'm just saying is that, like, okay, Saudi Arabia increasing oil production would increase the supply of oil and therefore lower the price of oil, right? Now, China is burning coal. So these are all energy producing countries, fossil fuel producing countries that are looking to, act rationally. And when we talk about acting rationally, you have places like Europe who want fossil fuels. They don't want to admit to wanting fossil fuels. And they say, well, we're not going to use your stuff anymore. What is the rational thing for a fossil fuel producing country to do? Let the price stay up as high as it can, as long as it can, while they restructure their economy, because they know that persons are moving away from fossil fuels. So they have zero incentive to increase oil production. Places like China are different. 2/3 of their economy fueled by coal. So like they're saying, oh, energy crisis, let's make money. So we even have in Jamaica where we're saying like, okay, gas prices are too high, let's use ethanol. And we're going to go into a quick lesson about how these stuff generate energy to know why this might not actually be a good idea. So we have fossil fuels, right? And then you can light them on fire. And when you light them on fire, they get really hot. Now that heat will expand and it will either push a turbine, and that can generate mechanical energy to move your car forward, or you can put water near that heat, and that water turns into steam when it gets hot, and that pushes a turbine and you get electricity. Now, alcohol is not very efficient at producing heat. It's clean, it doesn't produce a lot of emissions, but when you need that power to move your car or move anything, there's no substitute for actual fossil fuels, at least the way the internal combustion engine is done. So I don't really think ethanol personally is the best solution. Yeah, you have like modifications. A lot of cars in Brazil do that. So I know I'll come under a lot of fire for saying what I'm doing. But with the current technology, it's not really going to move very far. So nobody really knows what to do. And everybody is trying to say, oh, let's back off of it. Because people are buying so much, there are people like you and me producing, and then the stuff needs to go onto a boat, and then those boats back up because US ports are small, and then those stuff need to come. Truck drivers, like they don't have any incentive to take on long jobs because they get paid the same amount if the job takes them 2 hours or 2 days, right? And there's a lot of red tape that you have to go through to even be a truck driver, lots of bad treatment. We're not even counting the fact that demand is so high in the US now, so we have lots of containers coming off, right? And that's jamming it. That's jamming these support in the middle of this energy crisis.
Lots of fatigue as well. I mean, a lot of truckers work for like 12 hours a day or more just driving across states and stuff like that. So it's no.
Right. So the reason I'm trying to highlight these things is that stuff we would oftentimes overlook can be influencing the prices that we see for patties or whatever. So, well, I mean, we use patties as the inflation thing. What were you saying, Victor?
Yeah, I was saying, and guys, remember, the whole reason why supply chain is such a huge factor in inflation right now. Remember, with globalization, everybody is dependent on somebody else, some other country in the world. We're getting raw materials all across the world. We're exporting somewhat. So it's that if it comes back to the basic market model of demand and supply, right? So if we're having supply chain issues, supply is so limited. That's why prices are skyrocketing, right? So this comes back to everything. You might be wondering why patty increasing every single year or like every single month, KFC prices going up 10 times per year, like everything comes back to this, right? So it's a real issue. So it's important to understand what's happening. So we can just kind of like keep up and somewhat protect our money. So yeah.
And that's why we're investing. Another thing is that, you know, people don't really seem to be taking this inflation as a cue to ease off of buying. So like, I think the British, it wasn't the Prime Minister, it was some authority in the UK. He was saying like, oh yeah, people, we know we have inflation, but please don't ask for a pay increase because yeah, you're going to make the problem worse, which is a really bad political thing to say, but it makes sense because I saw an article on Yahoo Finance this morning. People are just spending through the inflation. Who cares? Let's spend anymore. And the more you spend, the more these containers come, the more they get delayed. When they're out, you get the first 4 or 5 days delaying out on the ship like this for free. After that, for every container, it's an extra $2,000 US per day. So if you have a 9-day delay, then you know you're looking between like $8,000 and $10,000 US just for that. And then there's a scarcity of pallets because you know there's so many containers. So if you don't have pallets, which are now expensive, you have to pay people to unload manually. So it's like a big mess. Let's get into this because I'm realizing that the time is gone. The last point I was going to talk about was printing money. So we have this really funny meme. We also see the M2 money supply going up way faster than it used to. Again, really contentious, but if the M2 weren't changing and we saw inflation, then the argument would be stronger that it has nothing to do with it. But the M2 is changing and we're seeing inflation. So that's probably another thing. I'm not saying I know everything, not saying any of us know everything. The last thing I want to close with is that what we are seeing at 9.7% is not hyperinflation. That's insulting to people who live in these countries. Like in Venezuela here, prices double at this rate every 1.5 weeks. So if you bought a patty at $200 2 weeks ago, then it would be nearly 400 and something now. And then by the end of March, it would be over $1,000 for one patty, right? That's what real hyperinflation looks like. If we're talking about what we have, yes, it sucks. Yes, you know, patties are more expensive. Yes, KFC, yes, electricity, even with that global energy crisis, but it's not like this. So while we maintain our perspective, right, we know that others may not see things the same as we do, but it's like, yeah, we try to address the challenges that we have, but we count our blessings in the meantime. I know this is serious, guys, because like, tell me, do you see 3 or do you see 4? So this is the issue that policy people have to debate. You have people who don't even agree on what the facts are. Do we need to move away from fossil fuels or do we need them in our transition away from them? Oh no, cold turkey. Some people see it this way and some people see it that way. And that's why that song that we opened with, it had that lyric, it translates to keep me free from any ideology. Ideology means you're a one-sided argument. And the idea is, you know, even though you see it your way, try to appreciate that other people see it differently. So
yeah,
I think I've spoken enough for today.
Everyone is really just doing their best, including policymakers, us as citizens. So we have to keep doing our best. And thank you so much for that presentation, Jason. So now we're going to hand over to Malik to introduce our lovely guest speaker today, guys. We have Kalilah Reynolds, everybody's favorite nowadays. So Malik is going to introduce her and we'll get right into it.
All right, guys. So Kalilah Reynolds is Jamaica's leading and most influential business and finance journalist. After serving 20 years in television and radio in Jamaica and her native country, Belize, Kalilah branched out on her own in 2020, launching Kalilah Reynolds Media, KRM. KRM's mission is to help Caribbean people create and maintain personal health, wealth, and prosperous economies by making business and finance easy to understand. Its flagship programs are Jamaica's #1 rated business show, Taking Stock, and the financial education program, #Money Mondays JA. Kalilah is a published author of 2 books and has a MA, my bad guys, in communication studies from the University of the West Indies and a BA in journalism from Fordham University in New York City, with both distinctions. She's also a mom of 3 beautiful children and a wife to the world's best husband. Guys, please help me welcome Kalilah Reynolds.
Welcome, Kalilah, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Oh, is my video off? Sorry. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi,
It's been
welcome.
a minute since you guys have been trying to get me on. Malik has been diligent in trying to get me to make this presentation. So consistency and your diligence, Malik, has finally paid off. Here I am.
Yes, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. We really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us today, and we're looking forward to learning so much about you and hearing about your journey in just the whole industry and, you know, as a woman challenging the status quo, coming into this industry, doing a whole transition. So we have some questions for you. It's going to be like a chat session, guys. We're going to learn a lot from Kalilah. Feel free to ask questions in the chat as well, but we do have some pre-structured questions. So Jason is gonna take the lead with that.
Hi, Kalilah. Welcome again.
Hi, Jason.
So our first question for you today is, why did you start Kalilah Reynolds Media?
Ooh, I think Kalilah Reynolds Media started me. You know, the land of Plymouth Rock landed on me. You know how that is. Yeah. So I started creating content before I actually created the company. And as you guys know, I've been working in, as you read in the intro in my bio, I've been working in media for a long time. And in the past maybe 6-7 years, I've kind of narrowed my journalism focus to business and finance. And so I was reporting on these things in traditional newsrooms, most recently at Nationwide News Network. I think somebody needs to mute their mic.
Landed on me.
Oh, there is a delay. That's what it is. There is a delay. So maybe I should grab my earphones and that might distract from, hold on, just let me grab my earphones, 1 sec. Yeah, I don't know if it was my internet that's moving slow or somebody else's, but if you're not speaking, you could put it on mute so that you don't get that feedback.
Right. Okay. I'm hearing you now. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys fine, but I am
Awesome.
hearing myself delayed by a few seconds. So if you're not speaking, let me just ask you to turn off your mic just to mute so that I don't get distracted by that feedback. All right, cool. Yeah, so like I was saying, I started, well, focusing on business and finance journalism, but at...
Oh, there's still a delay.
Yeah,
Right.
still somebody...
I'm hearing you now. Can you hear us?
Okay, so you, yeah. All right, I think that solved the problem when you muted, last person to mute. Okay, so where was I? Yes, business and finance journalism. And I realized though that there was a huge interest in the topic, but traditional media hasn't been giving the subject area the type of attention that it deserves and that the audience has been demanding, especially when you had that explosion in, I think it was 2018 2019, 2 years when we had Jamaica being the top performing stock exchange in the world. There was a lot of interest. You started seeing heavy interest in IPOs. And then when the government came up with the Wigton IPO, there was tremendous interest in that because the government was really marketing it heavily. And traditional media hadn't been doing that justice as a news item and as a story. You weren't hearing much information about it. So you'd hear a little tiny little story here that government is launching this IPO, but then we have all these people who are interested and they're not getting the information that they need on the traditional airwaves, radio, TV, newspaper. So I started doing it for social media and posting this type of information on Instagram. And really after Wigton, it just started taking off from there. And then in 2020, early 2020, just before the pandemic, the Trans-Jamaican Highway came out and they even doubled down on the marketing efforts for that. And so my platform really took off because I was one of few people talking about it, especially in a relatable way. And after that started taking off, I said, okay, I need to formalize this company. We started Taking Stock, my program that comes on YouTube on a Tuesday. And I realized, okay, we have something here that is more than that meets the eye. We have a model that is sustainable. I found that there were companies, sponsors who were willing to sponsor this type of content because clearly there was a need in the market for it that wasn't being met by the traditional sources. And Kalilah Reynolds Media was formed, KRM.
Wow, that's a great journey. That's a really interesting and a great journey. So our next question kind of ties into that. So we're wondering how long did you have KRM, Kalilah Reynolds Media, in the works before you went full time? So did you always know that this is the plan that you had a business plan from years before, but you were just transitioning? How long was that entire process? Because I know sometimes people plan to start businesses and they say, okay, I'm going to start in the next 6 months. But then when you get into it, you realize the process might take so much longer. So how long was it for you?
I had no plan to start a company. Like I said, the company started me. The content came before the business. I still don't have a proper business plan. I'm working on one now. Like I have a business coach now who's helping me to develop a strategic plan. And this is what, like 3 years into it now. We've just been kind of feeling our way along. So I was happy with my job. I liked working at Nationwide, being on the radio every morning, writing news stories, pursuing, like being a full-time journalist. I was happy with that. But then when my followers started demanding more and more content and wanting me to keep current because they want to keep current, they want to know what's coming up, it started taking up more and more of my time, obviously. And eventually it also led to some conflicts with my existing employer. And right. So that was bound to happen. And I left before we really came to a head. But I think if I didn't leave when I did, it could have eventually caused, and it likely would have eventually caused real conflict between myself and them. Well, I left before that had an opportunity to happen, fortunately, so we left on good terms. And yeah, that's how that happened. There was no plan for me to launch out and start this business. The business started me.
I love that. That sounds really good. Okay, Malik, you're next.
Okay, wow. All right. Okay, so Kalilah, given your job in the media industry, how important do you think the media is for the financial markets or business on a whole?
Depends on what type of media you're talking about. It's super important because we have traditional media, we have social media. So these are some of the things we're talking about now, but it is very important. So when you have anything happening in the market, investors rely on reports in the media. We rely on that filter. So yes, there are publications on the Jamaica Stock Exchange's website, and they have that news section, and the companies publish their press releases there. But the public in general doesn't often go to that site because you want the headlines. You don't have time to read all the 20, 30 press releases that come on JSC's website daily. You kind of need that filter. You need somebody to tell you what are the highlights of all these things, all these reports. So the companies publish their reports. Nobody has time to go through and read all the reports except David, and I saw him log in earlier. I'm sure David is like one of the few people who reads every single report that's posted on the JSC's website in detail and
Yes.
studies. But most people don't have the time to go through all of that. So having that filter is important, and it helps you to make your investment decisions. So media is super important in providing that type of information, whether it's traditional or social.
Well, you were talking about that there's this demand in the market for that kind of information. So you have persons who want to know what these long reports have, but they don't have the time to do that.
Right.
And you had said that that had motivated you to go down that road. But personally, is it that you had an interest in finance to that extent before, or were you trying to explore something? What kind of inspired you to take the leap, from seeing a need to deciding to fill it?
Yeah, so I was already a business reporter at that point in time, but there wasn't, so I had pitched a show to NNN, and they weren't really interested in it to have like a longer format program talking about business and finance, and they kind of brushed it off. Then I came up with the idea to do Taking Stock as a television program, pitched it to TVJ and CVM. They weren't interested either. They wanted actually for me to produce it, and then I would pay them to air the show. And it's a lot of money, it's like almost $200,000 per episode to air one program, a half an hour program on TVJ. And it just wasn't a sustainable business model based on what I would be able to charge for advertising. So I decided to just take it to YouTube and see what happened from there. And it's been a success, a very successful business model. But yeah, I did have the interest long before. And even though I was reporting on business news, what really sparked the interest was becoming an investor myself. So I became an investor. My husband and I started investing in stocks, and we were looking for information, and we couldn't find the type of information we needed that was easy to understand, that was timely. You have to go and do all this research on your own. And so I started, developing content that I wanted to see. So I was doing the research for myself and then just sharing it with the public, and that's how that took off.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So we've gotten the general idea, the introduction to your journey. So getting more into the transition, what is it that specifically made you want to transition from general journalism into being more business focused? I know you saw a gap in the market for knowledge. People wanted something easy to understand. But how did you yourself get that idea, and how did you garner enough knowledge for yourself to focus exclusively on business, so much so that you could make an entire company out of it?
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of just happened. When you're in a newsroom, in a general newsroom, you gravitate towards certain types of stories, right? Yes, in the beginning, your editor will assign you stories, but as you grow in the industry, you are able to claim certain stories for yourself. If you're a senior reporter in a newsroom, you start saying, okay, I want to cover that one, and your editor will be fine with that. And then you start gaining a reputation for covering those types of stories. So I always had an interest in the economic stories. So following developments with the country's debt. In the past 10 years, covering IMF agreements, there's a lot that has been happening on the economic front that I was just very interested in covering as a story and in having knowledge for myself. And, there's economics tends to tie into finance, tends to tie into the business community. And so I just started, in a general sense, kind of shifting towards that direction. And my newsroom didn't have a business department. I don't know if they even have one now. I was the first business and finance editor. That was a position created for me, or I should say created because of me, because there was no business and finance editor before me. And there was no business department. There was no specific business reporter even. And so when in looking at, what type of role I should be put into, because we were looking at a promotion for me from the general newsroom to a more editorial position. And my boss, Cliff Hughes, said, what about business and finance editor? I was like, I like it. That's a good idea, he said. And he recognized that I had become known for that type of story. And he really created that role for me, and I embraced it full on. Like the title kind of empowered me to do more in that space.
Wow, it really sounds like this path was created for you, Kalilah, and it's just like you're discovering it as you go along.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really takes a lot of like bravery and guts to do that. So I just want to ask, how did you build up the confidence to make the big step from working in a media house to starting your own? And at what point did you feel confident enough to make the big step?
Confidence has never really been my issue. I tend to do things and think about it afterwards. When I get an idea and I get super excited about it, like I need to do it now. Because if you don't do it immediately, you lose the interest in doing it. You lose that excitement, and that excitement tends to drive you. So, but like I said, I had started doing this for a year and change before I finally left NNN. And the reason I left is not because of, it wasn't because of any specific confidence issue. I didn't leave earlier, but I just needed to make sure that I could sustain and support myself with this business, because I wouldn't have that salary, that guaranteed salary to rely on anymore. Now I'm becoming a full-time entrepreneur. I need to make sure that this business can actually sustain me. So at that point in October 2022, I was confident enough that we had a solid income stream, and that I could sustain myself at an equivalent or better salary than I was already making at NNN. So once I felt sure of that, and then of course, there was a ton of work to do. I just didn't have time to continue doing both. And that's what led to the decision to leave and go full time.
So the uncertainty, even though you had the confidence, it was still like a big deal to go all in, because you are giving up a measure of security to get a measure of opportunity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a scary thing when you know that you have to depend entirely on yourself for your income. Going from, I've never been an entrepreneur before. This is my first time being an entrepreneur. I didn't have any business training. I have a little bit of that now. But going from always being an employee in my entire adult life to just having to depend on me and my own resources and my own skill and connections, that's a little bit daunting.
So we're talking about the challenges, and you've said time, you've said the uncertainty, depending on yourself. I want to ask you that as a woman coming up in the industry and making such a mark, that's the thing, not only being there, but having so much effect, so much meaning. What were the ways that you overcame these challenges?
Planning. So what we do with KRM, with our sponsorship contracts, we typically do 1-year sponsorships. The minimum we do is 3 months, but I go for longer term contracts because it gives the same security that I was looking for. So being able to plan and know that, okay, I have 4 companies or 5 companies that have 1-year contracts with us, that gives me security that for the next year, I'll be good and I don't have to worry about having to try find money or try find a new sponsor again next month. So being able to plan that and see it all on paper, that is definitely assuring.
Sounds good. So it sounds like you're a good planner, Kalilah. So what attributes do you think are necessary for being a successful entrepreneur in general? So any business person needs these specific attributes. And then I want to know, especially as a woman, tell us, what do we need to know?
Yeah, so planning is super important, keeping an eye on the finances at all times. So it's all fun and games to create content and put stuff out there, but how do you turn this into a business? How can this sustain you? We now have 5 full-time employees, and I'm considering hiring a 6th. And it started off from me creating content on my phone and me being the first full-time employee. And every time I hire somebody, I have to go through the numbers and make sure that it adds up, that we have the money to sustain whatever it is that we want to do, because you don't want people joining the team and then a couple months down the road, you can't pay them. I remember when my first employee came to me and asked me to write a bank letter because she was buying a car. And I'm like, wow, okay. this is do or die. Like you can't let people down once you become an employer, because now they have financial commitments. Now she has her loan payment to make. Now I have employees who have children, they have families to feed, and you can't let them down. So you have to be sure that you have an eye on the finances at all times. So planning is super important. Understanding your numbers is super important. And then as an entrepreneur, identifying trends, seeing what are the opportunities in the market. And you probably hear this all the time, doing the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I've never done it formally on paper. Actually, I recently kind of did with my business coach asked me to do it, but I'd never done one before that. But I do realize that I have been following trends. I'm somebody who always looks for the opportunity. What is it that people want? And how can I provide it? How can I do that? How can I get in on that opportunity? What are the trends in the industry? What are people looking out for? So having a keen eye for the trends and a keen eye for your business's numbers, because you're not in business if you're not making money or if you're losing money. And as a woman now, that's a whole other kettle of fish, especially as a mom, when you have a family. When it's you alone, that's fine. Like I could work from morning to night. I remember when I had COVID and I had to be in isolation, I had to be in quarantine, and my whole family was, out at the house. I was in the house by myself for 3 weeks. I literally would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I would work till like 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I feel like if I didn't have a family, that would pretty much, like I would forget to bathe and eat because I'm just working I have to remind myself, like set alarms that I need to go bathe and I need to get something to eat. And if I didn't have a family, that probably would be me, my day-to-day life. Like I just work all day because I like what I do. But having a family, it keeps me in check and forces me to make time to slow down. But you also need to find a way to balance. And that's something that we talk about a lot. It can be difficult for me sometimes to turn off the business mind. Like just earlier this week, I'm lying in bed with my husband and I said something about the business. I can't remember what it was. And he just rolled his eyes like, I'm like, why did you roll your eyes? And he said, talking about work again, business again. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. So as a woman, though, it's super important if you have children, if you have a family, that you are able to get help. So it was extremely difficult, especially because of COVID, and we weren't able to have any help in the house. So we didn't have a helper for several months over a year because of COVID. And I finally convinced my husband to let us get a helper again, because we have 2 small kids, like 2 and 3 years old, toddlers, and they were younger than that before. So I had Ryan, my son, while Trans Jamaican Highway IPO was coming out. Wow. I launched Taking Stock when I was 6 months pregnant with him. And then TJH IPO was like the biggest thing. That was in February. He was due February 17th. And I had the Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark, on Taking Stock pre-recording on February, what was it? So Ryan was born the 9th. That was a Sunday. So the Friday was the 7th. So I had him on the show February 7th. And my son was born February 9th, 2 days later. And I took my laptop to the hospital with me. Wow. So I'm like, this is the biggest opportunity. Like, we're going to get so many new followers, so many new subscribers from this. We're going to get all these up. And it turned out to be exactly the case. Like, it was one of our highest viewed episodes ever. And we got a ton of new subscribers. We got new sponsorships out of it. So yeah, it was worth it to me, even though it was a very difficult time because I'm literally birthing my child, which my husband wasn't too happy about. But that's how the cookie crumbled. And afterwards, after that experience, what made me realize, okay, I need to get help. I can't continue doing all of this on my own. And I made my first hire right around that time. And then we also, several months later, got help in the household as well.
Wow. All right. So Kalila, with being pretty much one of Jamaica's biggest finance media moguls, I might just say that, how do you handle the additional attention, good or bad, from being a public figure?
That's not hard for me because I've been a public figure for so long. Like I'm used to criticism. Like it doesn't faze me. I've been in media in both Belize and here in Jamaica. And every time I start and people don't know me, there's always gonna be criticism. Like you're gonna get compared to your predecessor. When I first started doing the morning show in Belize, I was taking over from a lady named Ann Wade. And people would call and say, oh, she's not like Ann. Ann is way better. And they'd criticize whatever it is. I said, why she don't comb her hair? At the time, natural hair wasn't in everything. Yeah. this was
Wow.
like 20 years ago. So at the time, natural hair wasn't really a thing. And people were shocked to see hair like this. And this actually looks a lot tamer than I used to wear it back in the day. I used to wear like a full-on afro on TV, and people would call and be like, why she don't comb her hair? And you learn to take criticism. When I started on Nationwide here, same thing. Oh, she's not Emily Crooks. Emily Shields is her name now, but she was Crooks before she got married. Oh, she's not as good as Emily. Oh, this and that. Oh, why she don't go back to Belize? Who is this non-Jamaican person? So you get used to dealing with criticism. When people criticize me now, it's no big, it's water off my back. Like I don't take it anyway. If it's constructive criticism, great, because then you can learn from it. If you made a mistake in your reporting, I can handle that. I can deal with that. That's something you can learn from. And if it's just malicious criticism for no reason, then I just ignore it.
I like that. That reminds me of the difference between a fixed and growth mindset. So some stuff are in your control and you want to improve on those, but some stuff are just people being people, and you leave that aside, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does get to you, you get annoyed, but I don't let it bother me for too long.
So we have the challenges of, well, the startup challenges where you're leaving some certainty, you had your family and all those obligations, you had people that you didn't want to let down, you had criticism, even as well as you handled it, that's another challenge. I want to ask you about the challenge of going up against bigger media houses. So to be honest, you're providing a service, you're providing content that Gleaner business would provide, that Observer business would provide. So if you have these giant houses and you start it up, how did you feel about that? How did you handle that daunting task?
I never really thought about that. It's now that you point it out, I realized, oh, you make a good point. But that never even occurred to me that could be a daunting task. So I went about getting the sponsorship first because the show couldn't happen without sponsorship to begin with. I didn't have the money to do it. So I went about getting the sponsorship first. And once you have your sponsorships, then you have the money to create this product. And like I said, my strategy was to lock them in for several months at a time. When I was first starting the show, though, those contracts were about 3 months. Now we can do a year contract, but in the beginning, because it's a brand new show, it's not tested yet. We did 3 months long contracts. So I knew that at least we could do 3 months worth of a show. We had money to do that. But it never daunted me in going up. I never even saw myself as going up against traditional media, because to me, they weren't really my competition because I was offering something that they weren't. Like I said, I offered these shows, these ideas to traditional media, and they weren't interested. So I just created something new. We're going to YouTube. And the funny thing is, everybody told me that it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be successful on YouTube. Everybody's like, nope, sponsors aren't going to go for it because it's YouTube. If it's not on TV, on TVJ, it's not going to be successful. You're not going to get the sponsorship money. And I said, well, let me just try anyway. But I think one advantage that I did have, and it's a major advantage, is that one, yes, I'm a well-known media personality. And two, because I am a business reporter, I have relationships with many of the people who would sponsor the show. So I already know a Keith Duncan because I've interviewed him many times, JMMB. I already know the people who are in charge at the various investment firms because I've interviewed them many times. So we've developed a relationship, a professional relationship, through me calling them for interviews, calling their PR people for information. And once you have those contacts, it becomes a much easier sell. So now they know my reputation. They trust me to provide the information. They know that I have produced a quality work on both radio and television, because by that point I had already won awards by the PAJ for business journalism. So that makes it a whole lot easier to sell this new untested product from a new person who is venturing out there. They're not completely unfamiliar with me. I'm not trying to sell something that they don't know, and they trust that I will be able to deliver. So that did give me a huge advantage.
You know, Kalila, it sounds like, even though you mentioned that you're currently doing a SWOT analysis for your business, it sounds like you already have one in your head, because those are such great opportunities, and you took so much passion with you, and dedication, and extreme hard work to really get to where you are now. So we've learned a lot about the business side of you and gotten a lot of insight.
Let me add this before we continue though. So even though I had some of those relationships already, when I decided that I wanted to do the show, I started showing up at events where I knew some of the decision makers would be. So if NCB is doing an IPO, if they're leading an IPO on behalf of a client, I would show up at the listing ceremony. And because all their PR people are going to be there, all their marketing people will be there. Those are the people who need to make the decision to sponsor my show. So I'm going to show up, show my face, and introduce myself if they don't already know me. Some of them would have known me. Some of them would have spoken to me on the phone, but we've never met in person. So I started showing up to all of these industry type events and introducing myself, making myself known to them in person, striking up a conversation, developing a relationship, and letting them know that, oh, I'm working on the show, by the way, and this type of thing would be great for that show. And, started warming them up to the idea of the concept, so that when the phone call came and the email came, they already know, okay, they already knew what it was.
Guys, I hope you're taking notes, because Kalila is dropping gems today. Like, that is so smart and such an incredible way of taking advantage of an opportunity. So if you're an entrepreneur, guys, make sure you keep this stuff in mind, take notes, because these are incredible tips and so much insight on what it's like behind the scenes of running a business. So that's excellent. So Kalila, we know you're a businesswoman, right? So you're also an investor, and I know you personally invest and you share so much knowledge with Jamaican investors in general. So what would be your 3 top tips for investors, whether already in the game or brand new to it? Your top 3 tips.
So number 1 has to be consistency. So, all right, so consistency, patience, and I have to think about a third one, but definitely those 2. So, and research, consistency, patience, research. Those are our 3 things that you must have. So of course, you want to understand the company that you're investing in. Don't just throw money into something because of hype, because you hear everybody talking about it. You have no idea what you're doing. You want to at least try to understand what the company does for money. What are you putting your money into? And that way you can kind of manage your expectations. So I had somebody call me today about the JFP IPO, which will open on Monday at Jamaica Fiberglass. And they produce like really nice furniture for businesses. And the person who called me about it is the person who built my set for taking stock. So he's in a similar industry. And I'm like, well, this is great for you, because that's your industry. You know exactly what it costs to build the type of things that they're building. If you look at their numbers, you will understand where their numbers, if they look high or low, based on what your experience is in the industry, because you are building that same type of thing. So you know if their profit margins look reasonable or not. So that's just an example of investing in what you understand in, doing your research. Number 2, like I said, is consistency. So you want to consistently invest in the market. So yes, you can buy something and put it down and just leave it there for 20 years. But I just have much more success, much faster. I saw Keisha Bailey, who is one of the guest analysts on my show. She posted something today. Let me see if I can find her post. Can I share screen? I can find her post on Instagram right now and share the screen with you. But it was a really, and it's something that I always saying about being consistent with your investments. So you want to be putting money in at least once a month. And I always say what you really should do is make it automatic. So you want to have, where is her? I'm on her Instagram, but I'm not seeing the post. Where is it? Maybe she has it on, oh, I know where it is. She has a second page called Profit Jumpstarter. It's not on her personal page. It's on the Profit Jumpstarter page. Yes. All right, I found it. Let me share it with you now. Share screen. All right, so she posted this. Hey, I invested $100,000 in an investment with an interest rate of 10% for 5 years. The other person says, I invested $10,000 in the same investment, but consistently added $10,000 monthly over the 5-year period. So the other one started with a higher amount, $100,000. Second person started with just $10,000, but they added $10,000 a month for 5 years. So person one, Max, says, after the 5 years, my investment was worth $161,000, kiss my teeth. And then person two, Jody, says, after the 5 years, hers was up to $748,000 during the same period of time. And that just really speaks to being consistent with your investments. So I'm always telling people, do a salary deduction. So if you have a consistent source of employment, do a salary deduction so that that money goes directly to your investment account every single month. And you are able to use that to purchase additional stocks and take advantage of any opportunity when it arises. So even if you don't purchase at the same time or immediately every month, at least the money can accumulate in that account so that when a JFP pops up or another IPO pops up or whatever it is that you want to purchase or buy into, the money is available for you. And if you don't get a consistent salary, what you can do is set a percentage of any paycheck that you get. So if you're self-employed and you get paid inconsistently, you get paid here or there, just say, well, whenever I get a paycheck, whatever period of time that is, I am going to take 5% out of it and it's going directly to my investment account. So consistency, research, and patience. They say patience is a virtue. It absolutely is when it comes to investing. A lot of people just want to get in and get out quick, and that's cool too. If that's your strategy, that can work for you. But then a lot of those same people kick themselves when they realize that the stock appreciated over a longer period of time. Like Fontana is a perfect example. Fontana IPO'd at $1.88. And within a couple of weeks, if I remember correctly, it was at $3 and change. And a lot of people were like, yes, sell, quick flip. And then later on in the year, like 8 months later, it was at $7, $8. And all those people who sold at $3 were like, crapping on themselves. And then this year it rose to $12 from $1.88. So just understand the value of having patience. And that's something that people really need to understand more than ever now, because the market is still down. We are coming out of a recession. When you're coming out of a recession, where do things go from there? It can only go up, right? So you just have to have the patience to wait it out. And it might take a few years, but if you have that patience, it will be worth it in the end.
Yeah, funny enough, we were speaking about this exact thing last week with CPJ and coming out of a recession. So,
yep.
That's a great example. So there you have it, guys. Top 3 tips: patience, consistency, and research. There you have it. Okay, over to you, Malik.
All right. So Kalila, with all those different tips, what are the best sources of information to stay up to date with financial markets? So where could people go to find out about the Jamaica Fiberglass IPO?
Kalilah Reynolds Media, duh. So I'm actually interviewing Metri Siaga, and I don't remember who the second guest is, but I'm interviewing them tonight at 8 o'clock on my YouTube channel, and that will be live. So you can participate, you can ask your questions. I also have my newsletter. So we send out lots of the information via the newsletter. You can subscribe at KalilahReynolds.com/newsletter. So you have my newsletter, my social media channels, YouTube, of course. And then apart from me, well, you can look to traditional media sources. If you want it direct, you can go to jamstockex.com/news. That's where all the companies post all their information first, and that's where the media typically gets their information from. So jamstockex/news. You can get, so the prospectus will be posted there first before it's posted anywhere else. Companies submit their reports there. So that's a great source of primary information. And then if you need that filter and you don't have time to go through the 101 submissions that go to Jamaica Stock Exchange every day, then check the traditional sources. The papers have business sections on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. You also have, so that's Gleaner Observer. You also have Our Today, which is a business news publication as they send out an email, and they have a website. You can subscribe to their email newsletter. The TV news do business news segments after the main news, so usually right around 7:20, 7:30. They have business news segments that you can watch. Radio news also has some short, like 2-3 minutes business segments. So you can check out traditional media sources, go online. Loop News also does business news. You can subscribe to them. I don't know if they do a subscription, but you can check their website, the business section of the website. And those are some good sources. And of course, internationally, you have your CNBC, your Bloomberg, your Forbes, and those types of platforms. One of my favorites, Minority Mindset. Minority Mindset has a great, they have a YouTube channel with Jaspreet Singh, and they also have a great newsletter. And I'm always reading their newsletter because I like the very simple style that they break it down in. They give you all the trends, they give you all the news, but in a really fun and fresh way.
I've known about it for a few years. Another good one is also Morning Brew. It's a business newsletter. I don't know if other people know about it though, but it's really good as well.
Yeah, Morning Brew. I'm going to check it out.
Yes, check it out. Morning Brew. I'll type it in the chat. It's really good.
That's a local one, or
Oh, it's American.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it. I was wondering if there was another version. Okay.
Now, one thing I think is really cool with all this information is that it equips us to act, but having the discipline to act on it can be different. So I know a lot of us here were studying to go into certain jobs and hopefully earn a lot of money. So lifestyle creep is a big issue for young professionals. And in addition to that in particular, just in general, are there any tips that you'd give to young professionals who are looking to build their wealth, whether it be through diversifying income streams or preventing lifestyle creep? What would you have to say to someone in that position?
Yeah, so my number one thing is being consistent and setting up your investment account. So that's the top thing. Just get started. A lot of people feel like you need a whole lot of money to start, that investing is for rich people. And I always tell them investing is not necessarily for the rich. It is how you get rich. It's how you get there. It's one of the means to wealth creation. You don't need to start to save up $100,000 in order to get started. If you have $1,000, if you have even $500, you can start with that. The important thing is opening the investment account and actually taking the move to buy your first shares, to make your first purchase. And once you get that, once you've done that, everything else becomes much easier, because now you get excited about it and you get your first dividend check and you're super excited because you got something, you actually earned some money on it. Just take the first step with whatever you have. Don't be discouraged because you don't have a lot of money. Don't feel depressed don't feel ashamed that you don't have a lot of money, because trust me, if you start today with even $500 and your friend has 500 and they don't start, you will be better off than that friend. Absolutely. Just start.
Yep, get started, guys. And just as a reminder too, we plugged it previously. Kalila has an entire broker guide if you want to try to figure out which broker you want to get started with and open your investment account. It has an entire broker guide, which we've shared with you guys before. So get started ASAP, guys. So Kalila, on the topic of young professionals, right? You mentioned before that you'd go to events with with an opportunity in mind that you're going to take advantage of. You're going to network with people, right? And I think that's so smart because you really knew what you were going for and you achieved that goal. So what advice would you give us in terms of how do you navigate the space, the business space, the investor community, and what advice would you give us as young professionals on networking? How do we build our network? How do you navigate the space?
Yeah, just put yourself out there. So right now, there's not a lot of events that are happening. So you wouldn't be able to go to an IPO launch. Well, you might be able to because they still are doing the launches, but they're restricting the audience now. So you have to be on the list and all kind of things. But a lot of these events are still taking place virtually. So this is a great one. You make yourself known. So you ask questions in the chat. So you can attend, like, let's say Mayberry has a virtual investment forum once, is it once a week or once a month? I think it's once a month. You can have a direct line of access to Chris Berry from Mayberry via that forum, just by making yourself known. And if you start asking questions in that forum and they call out your name to ask that question, your name now becomes known to Chris Berry of Mayberry. You understand? And now when you see him out the road and you take an opportunity, you can introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm Kalilah. And he'll say, oh, you're the person always asking those questions at our investor forum. You can do the same at shareholder meetings. Make yourself known to the people who are important to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And that's just in the investment space. The same can happen in any space that you're trying to break into. If you're trying to get a job in marketing, if you're trying to get a job in whatever industry, find out what events are taking place in that space. If the company is hosting an event, they may be doing some type of product launch. Show up. Just show up and make yourself known to these people. Introduce yourself, strike up a conversation. If it's a virtual event, make sure you're commenting in the chat. Make sure you're asking questions in the chat. Networking doesn't have to be as hard or as daunting. Yes, it's about who you know, but you can make yourself known to people. I came here from Belize. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any old girls association to call upon. I didn't have any family and friends to call upon. I only had myself and my own resources. So I had to make myself known to people.
That's excellent advice. And guys, you know, we can really take advantage of the opportunities that we ourselves have because, you know, UWI sends a flood of emails every day. But if you look through, sometimes you'll realize there's so many opportunities that you can take advantage of to do some networking. So, for example, I remember once I saw the Faculty of Social Sciences, they had, I don't remember exactly what the topic was, but it was something business related, of course. And the person in charge of Proven was there, Peter, I'm forgetting his name right now. Someone remind me of his name.
Christopher.
Peter Bunting.
He's one of the shareholders, Peter Bunting, yeah?
Right. So, and he was talking about Proven and stuff, and it was a small meeting. And oh yeah, I see some people mentioning it in the chat too. So those are so many opportunities that we have. So you don't have to think networking is just for who is already big. You can make connections and let yourself known by just keeping an open mind and, you know, looking for opportunities.
Another great thing to do as well is, you know, the newspapers have these social pages, like Observer has their page too, Gleaner has something extra. So for me as a reporter, a lot of people see those pages as fluff, right? Or who's wearing what and who went where. But for me as a journalist, that was one of the most important pages I used to always look at in the papers because it's a lot of society people who come in those papers. So you get to see, oh, that's what she looks like. Oh, that's what he looks like. And so now you can put a face to the name so that when you see that person, you're like, oh, that's who that is. I can introduce myself rather than just knowing the name and not knowing what they look like.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so as pretty much a master networker and someone who knows several people across several different industries, we know you've done many interviews and spoken to many other people, but what interview stuck with you the most and why?
Oh, wow, that's a really tough question. there's been so many. I don't think, I'm trying to remember this gentleman's name. There was an interview that we did on security. Rattigan. So it didn't even have to do anything with business. But I always remember I interviewed this guy. I think his first name was Joseph Rattigan. And we interviewed him on Nationwide. He wanted to be the next commissioner of police. At the time, there was a vacancy. Was it after Ellington? Commissioner Ellington? Who came after Ellington? Don't even remember, but it's before the current commissioner, and there was a vacancy. And this guy named I think it's Joseph Rattigan was his name. He is a security consultant. He lives in America. He's Jamaican, but he lives in the States. And we talked to him for like nearly 2 hours. He was just really passionate about, he never did get the job. I don't know if he actually got an interview. He didn't end up getting the job, but he was just so passionate about security and about the development of Jamaica, tackling crime. We spoke for a long time about that. So that was one of the interviews that I remember for sure. That was very memorable.
Okay, so since we're talking about young professionals going into this space, networking, making a name, I wanted to ask you about your YouTube channel and going into that space. So the biggest misconception about being a content creator on YouTube, especially given how there's so many people now, what would you say that is? Like the most prevalent misconception, maybe in Jamaica or in general?
That you can make a lot of, well, it's not necessarily a misconception, but people feel like you can just automatically make a whole lot of money from YouTube. So YouTube is my smallest by far source of revenue for the company, the direct YouTube payments. I probably make like maybe 200 US a month off YouTube. Like that can't pay me. That can't pay my staff. It's not much money. And the funny thing is, or the very notable thing is, let's say I get 10,000 views on a video, right? And let's say I earn 20 US from that video. A good thing to note though is that YouTube pays financial creators more than they pay other creators. So I will make more money off of my 10,000 views for a financial video than maybe a Dottie Berry will make off getting 50,000 views on an entertainment video, right? But the other important thing to note is the audience. So let's say I get 10,000 views on a video and 8,000 of my viewers are in Jamaica, 2,000 are in the US, UK, Canada. And let's say I made $20 off of that video. Or let's keep it easy. Let's say I made $10 off of that video. 8,000 viewers were in Jamaica, remember? $8 out of the 10 would have been generated from the 2,000 viewers in the US. And then the next $2 is from the Jamaican viewers, because YouTube sponsors, the people who advertise on YouTube directly, the American audience is more important to them. They're selling to the US audience, less so than to the Jamaican audience. So it may begin to change, because we're seeing now like Barita spends heavily on YouTube ads. We're seeing Sagicor spending on YouTube ads. So we're starting to see local companies spend more on YouTube ads. So the percentage of revenue that I get directly from YouTube will probably start to increase based on the Jamaican viewers. But right now, as it is, the bulk of the money that I make is from the small percentage that watches from outside Jamaica. And like I said, you need a whole lot of views. Like you need probably 100,000 subscribers and up in order to, if you make a living just off the YouTube views alone. And it depends as well on the type of content that you're creating. So finance and tech pay a lot better on YouTube than entertainment and gossip and that type of content. But people also don't realize that there are so many other ways to monetize your YouTube. Like I said, that is just a drop in the bucket based on our revenue. We get the majority of our revenue from sponsorships. So we don't have to depend on YouTube to give us sponsors. we find our own sponsors for our programs. That's the bulk of our revenue. And then you can do merchandise. And then the other advantage that YouTube gives you is that you become well known. You become an industry expert. You become the person, the go-to person for a particular topic, which makes you in demand for speaking engagements and hosting engagements, which for me is my second biggest source of revenue. And then now, once you become really known as the expert and you know what you're talking about, you can launch a digital product, which can be an evergreen source of information for you, which is what I did with the masterclass. So you launch the masterclass, I only have to work on it once, spend money to create it once, and sell it throughout the year, and that can bring in revenue for you as well. But YouTube alone, don't focus on just the revenue that YouTube pays you. There are so many opportunities that it opens up for you to create revenue.
You know, you really sound like you have this whole entrepreneurship thing down pat, even though you said you started without the knowledge, you know? So you really have so many income streams and, you know, revenue streams in general for your business.
It's not down pat at all. Like when I started the business coaching a couple months ago, and my business coach started telling me certain things, I was like, what is she talking about? I felt so intimidated. I felt like I didn't know anything about business, I swear.
Oh, wow. Well, you surely have done multiple revenue streams. I know something you preach is we as persons, we need multiple revenue streams too. Multiple income streams is the way to wealth, guys. So if you watch Kalila or follow her, she always mentions three things: stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship. So what is the process of starting a business? How do we become entrepreneurs?
So I started before I really started. Like I told you, I started doing the business activities before I actually registered the business. I kind of put the cart before the, because I was just so excited to get started. And then I looked into the process to register an LLC, and I started filling out the forms, and I got confused and I didn't know what to fill out. And I just wanted to go ahead and start anyway. So I did, and then eventually got around to registering the business. But if you want, it's easier to start by just, I should say, registering the company. There's a difference between a company and a business. So if you want to start as just a sole trader, it's much easier and much cheaper to just register your business as a sole trader, as opposed to, and then you can later on, after the business starts bringing in some money, register it as a company, as an LLC, a limited liability company, which is a more complicated process that got me all confused. I should have just registered as a business first, but I didn't know that. So yeah, I just kind of figured stuff out as I went along. But you do want to register sooner rather than later, rather than doing business informally, because there's so many benefits to registering. When you register, you can now open a bank account in your business name. When you register, you can apply for grants, and we are one of the recipients of the DBJ's, excuse me, of the DBJ's Ignite grant this year, which is $3 million. If you are, I think, 3 years and older, if you've been in business for 3 years or more as a registered business, you could have qualified for $7 million. And that's just one of the grants that is available. The government has tons of grant funding, but you have to be registered. The CDB, Caribbean Development Bank, has grant funding available for business, but you have to be registered. And in addition to grant funding, there's opportunity for training, which is free. DBJ, again, has a voucher for technical assistance, which is pretty much free money. They will give you money to build a website, but you have to be registered. They will give you money. Well, they don't give you the actual money. It's a voucher. So they have vendors that they work with. So let's say they have a set number of web developers that they work with, and the web developer will build your website and DBJ will pay them through that program. So you get a free website. Or if you need to prepare financial statements, that's also covered under the program. There's marketing is covered under the program. I see Digital Global has been promoting, apply for your voucher and we'll fulfill it. So we'll do free marketing for you and DBJ will pay it. But you have to be registered. So there's so many advantages to registering your business. And I know one of the main reasons people don't like to register their business is because you want to avoid taxes, right? People are like, oh, but if I register my business, I have to file taxes and the government is going to take a percentage of my income. But guess what? If you are able to take advantage of the opportunities, the free opportunities, free money, and free resources that are provided, you can grow your business exponentially. So rather than staying small to avoid taxes, you can grow big and then the taxes will be minuscule. So let's say you're making $100,000 a month off your side hustle, which is pretty good, pretty decent side hustle. And you're not registered, you pay zero taxes, you keep your full $100,000. But then through registering, you get this free website, you get accounting, you get a grant, you get grant funding, you get all these opportunities, you get to attend networking events, and now your business grows and your business brings in $1 million a month and you're able to quit your job, you're bringing in $1 million a month. Business tax is 25%. So they'll take 250,000, you get to keep 750,000, which is way more than the 100,000 that you were making by staying small and hoping to avoid taxes. So there are just so many benefits. Just go ahead and register.
All right, so Kalila, I have just 2 questions for you. I don't want to keep you long right here, but I was just wondering, what are the biggest challenges you face as an entrepreneur? What is the most rewarding part? And also, what is one of the business decisions that you made that you wish you didn't? What do you regret in terms of a business decision?
That's 3 questions. Ask them one at a time because I'm gonna forget them. What's the first one?
Oh, okay. What was the biggest challenge you faced as an entrepreneur?
Biggest challenge. There have been a few. There have been a few. Dealing with, not even seeing myself as a leader, but learning to lead a team and manage different personalities. So I am used to doing things a certain way and at a certain standard, right? And especially when you start off as what they call a solopreneur and you're doing it all. When I started, I was doing all the research, all the writing, I did the editing, I did the marketing, I did everything myself. And then you start bringing people into the team to take over different parts of the job. And you have this expectation that they're going to do it exactly like you. But you have to realize that you need to train people if you want them to do it exactly like you or better. And not only train them, but give them the opportunities to make decisions, to sometimes make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So learning to lead a team, it has its challenges, but it also is its own reward when you get to see your team members grow. Like I said, now we have 5 full-time team members, and learning to communicate with your team members, learning boundaries, because we're a completely virtual team. So we communicate via WhatsApp, via email, and sometimes I like to send messages whenever something pops up in my head. And I remember one time I sent the developer a message at like 11:30 at night, and he responded. I didn't expect him to respond, right? I was like, oh, he'll just see it when he wakes up in the morning. And he responded, and he's like, first of all, office hours are closed. Like,
wow.
I'm like, oops, sorry. Okay, next time I'll send an email. So understanding people's boundaries, especially when you have a virtual team and there aren't set office hours that you see each other face to face, that can be a challenge. But you figure it out. You learn with each other. So that was question 1. What was the second one?
What is one business decision you made that you wish you had not?
I wish I had not.
Big regrets.
I don't want to say here because I don't want the person, by chance that the person is watching. I don't want them to feel bad. So, how can I put it that
Don't feel
way?
pressured. We fully understand that the person, yeah.
Okay, let's say following my instincts, right? So I had an instinct about something early that this was the wrong move, but because I knew the person before, I said, let me just go with it and give them a chance, right? But I knew from early that might not be a right fit, but I still wanted to give the person a chance. And then I just kept giving them another chance and kept giving them another chance and I didn't set clear expectations for the relationship early out as well, which would have made it a lot easier when the time came for us to finally end that business relationship. If we had a documentation to say, these are the expectations, A, B, C, and D. I didn't communicate that clearly, and I wish I would have.
Okay, right. I also forgot to say one more thing. What was the most rewarding part of being an entrepreneur? If you never got to.
Making the money, getting paid. That's definitely rewarding.
Yeah, and probably changing lives as well. Imagine how many people you've helped.
No, that's huge. Like whenever, and it's very motivating. Whenever people send me a message to say, I opened my investment account because of you. I started investing because of you. I took your master class and I learned so much. Like that is super, super rewarding. And it makes me want to continue doing it. When people call me and say, like the gentleman this morning who asked about JFP. And I'm like, I can't advise you because I'm not a financial advisor, but think about these things. And he's like, oh yeah, that is my industry. And you come to a realization and you see the light turn on in somebody's eyes as they start learning. And they call you like a couple of years later and say, thank you so much for convincing me to start. I had a business owner who I was speaking to a friend of mine recently. She's like, the only reason I did it is because you keep beating me over the head. Like every time I go on Instagram, I see you saying start, start, start. And she finally started with $50,000. And that's now tripled in a few months. And she's like, thank you so much for just delivering that consistent message. That is extremely, extremely rewarding.
So we've spoken about the past, how you've come to where you are now, how you've overcome those challenges. We're talking about the current projects you're working on. I have one question from the chat about the future. I think Kalilah asked it. It's saying, what is your outlook for the business with more individuals being interested in the financial news space?
My outlook for my business?
Yeah.
Sure. We gotta grow, We have set clear targets, which is new as well. It's come out of the business coaching sessions. So we now have a target for how many subscribers we want to have this year. We have a target for a revenue that we want to have this year, which I never had before. We were kind of just feeling in the dark and take what we get, But now we have a goal, and it's just for us to work towards that goal. So definitely want to have more subscribers, more email subscribers, as well as YouTube subscribers. We also want to expand our content. So we want to have more Caribbean content. We're looking at engaging other content creators and bringing them under the KRM umbrella. And because the financial opportunity is so big in the US market, we definitely want to look at creating more content for that market as well, because you have a lot of Jamaicans who live in the United States and people who live here who are interested in both. They want to invest in Jamaican stocks, also want to invest US stocks. That is a huge opportunity for us.
Awesome. Love that. We've been saying how you've been dropping gems and how like all this information is in your head you're sharing with us. We really appreciate it. And the last question that I think would be a good place to finish would be, knowing what you do now, would there be anything that you would have done differently in your past?
Yeah, so that goes to one of the questions that Malik asked about anything that I regret. So yeah, handling people, setting clear expectations from the beginning. I definitely would have registered my company much earlier because I missed some opportunities because we're not registered. Like I could have qualified for the $7 million grant rather than the $3 million grant if the company was 3 years old. And if we count from the time that I started producing the content, it would have been 3 years old at the time I applied, but I didn't register the business until like a year later. And that cost me $4 million in grant money. So definitely I would have registered the business earlier. I also would have hired an accountant immediately. And yeah, I thought I could do it all. I was like, QuickBooks, this is easy. Pull up a spreadsheet. This is easy. It's not that easy. So hire an accountant if you can. And you don't have to have a full-time accountant. Like I hired somebody who works on contract. So it's like another month they give me a report. They're not part of my staff. And you can get accounting services for like maybe $25,000, $30,000 a month if you have a business that is doing fairly well. And if you expect that your business is going to be bringing in decent income, you absolutely need an accountant. I mean, yeah, the sooner the better. Hire an accountant, register your business early, and set clear expectations for employees. So if you're able to set those, what they call key performance indicators when you're hiring, have that so that you can measure it in the future when you need to possibly fire, or at least negotiate salary increases or anything to do with that employee. You want to have stuff on paper that's measurable.
Kalilah, thank you so much for your time. You've dropped so many gems today, so much useful and practical information that we can apply to our lives and our businesses. And we just want to thank you so incredibly much for your time. Thank you guys all for being here. You know, this has been a pretty big meeting and our club is growing. Thank you so much for your time, Kalilah. We learned so much from you, and we're looking forward to your show tonight at 8. I see people in the chat asking about the IPO, but guys, we're not financial advisors, neither is Kalilah. So
nope, no comment. I'm not going to tell you if I'm buying or not, because people love to say, well, what are you invested in? I'm like, nope, that's a trick, same way, trying to be smart, asking the same question. You're not going to say that Kalilah say buy this IPO, then the IPO flop and it's Kalilah's fault. No, not going to happen.
Nope. Yeah, thank you so much, Kalilah, for coming out. You dropped a lot of information, a lot of wisdom, and we can just see experience just coming off, like just off the seam. So thank you so much, and let's hope that all of us can make way more money for 2022. Let's get this money, guys.
Let's get this money. Okay, thank you so much, Kalilah.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye. And thank you so much, everyone in the UWI Young Investors Club, for coming out today. We had a great meeting. Thank you guys for your participation. The chat was buzzing. Thank you to everyone who's been sharing the club with their friends and growing it. Continue to do so, guys, because as you can see, we have so much useful knowledge. Share it with a friend, help them to grow financially, and we're all on this path to success. So thank you so much, everyone. Remember, we'll plug the form in the chat to officially sign up for the club if you haven't as yet. If you signed up last semester, you're all good. But remember also to apply for the shadow exec. Take on some responsibility, guys. You can build your resume, build your leadership skills, which is so important, as Kalilah mentioned. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Continue to invest, and as Kalilah always says, let's get this money. So bye, guys. Have a great week.
Guys, one more thing before we leave. So we had the inflation discussion, and I know that it has a lot of moving parts that no one person really understands. Malik is going to be hosting, well, Malik and I think David Rose, if he's here, are going to be hosting a Twitter space on Sunday at 7:30. So it's really Malik's thing. You can go on his Twitter handle, which I think is in his username. And we'll be delving into the issue about, you know, supply chains, about the energy crisis, about printing money, and a lot of other moving parts that would make a small open economy like Jamaica vulnerable to inflation. So if you want more details on that, stay tuned till 7:30. And remember Kalilah's show about JFP tonight at 8. So those are stuff coming up.
Yeah, guys. And with inflation, we're also going to be talking about Portmore and the whole entire 15th Paris situation, but that's more of a political side to it. So it's split into two. So Sunday, 7:30 p.m. If you're interested, I'm going to tweet it out probably Sunday morning. Then you can set a reminder right there if you're on Twitter. And I think you can also listen to Twitter Spaces, even if you're not on Twitter. I think you can go online and listen to them from there. So yeah, check out Kalila's show tonight. It should be live streamed. And yeah,
Yep.
funds and money for all.
Lots of opportunities, guys. Opportunities for learning and for networking and just growing yourself and just, the path to success. So have a great week, guys. Always keep your mind open and keep your eyes open for opportunities in the market and in life in general. So thank you once again, everyone. Thank you so much again, Kalilah, and have a great week, guys. Bye.